Well, great. It's really nice that you could come on. And I've been reading your book. I'm not quite finished with it yet, but almost. I think I just have a couple of chapters left, and it's been really enjoyable to listen to read. Sorry, I've been reading I've been listening to audiobooks lately, so my brain isn't working. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of get to know you and what you're about. And it was interesting that I was looking on your website, and and I know that you've been working as a social worker. And what made you decide to write a book about romance? Yeah, it started.
Well, I actually really wasn't a conscious decision at the beginning. I had done several drafts of my first book, Living Well with Chronic Illness, and was just kind of letting it rest for a while so I could give it a fresh look. And I had this weird, strange, disturbing crush on Adrian Brody, who had starred in The Pianist. And even though I had been very passionate about movies at that time for almost 30 years, I had never had this kind of crush. And it was funny and disturbing. I mean, I was dreaming about him. It was very strange. So I wrote about it to amuse myself and sort of process it, and sent it to various family members to amuse them. And I got such a positive response. It was very heartening. And then I had a crush on a friend of my father's, which was also strange, but not disturbing. That was just delightful.
Yeah.
So I wrote about that. And when I read it to my dad, because I was very open with my father, I had a great father, he said, you should really publish that. Then I started this bizarre year it wasn't really bizarre, but it was a whirlwind year of dating. And I just started writing about it as a way to process my feelings and for fun. And I sent them out to family members, and they really liked it. And about halfway through, I thought, maybe I have another book here. But it really was an evolution. I didn't make a conscious decision at the start at all.
Yeah, it's funny. When I saw The Pianist, I think I had the same crush. Okay.
Yeah, I think that it was such a compelling performance that I'm not surprised that you had a similar reaction.
Oh yeah, he's amazing.
He was amazing in that role. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, in a lot of them, I've seen him in several movies. I'm not as good at remembering what the names of them were. But I definitely see a lot of movies too. Yeah, so and you were really open with it, with your family about it too, you were saying.
We laughed about it. My niece, who was probably about, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 at the time, made me an Adrian Brody puzzle, which I still have. It was hysterically funny, and it was really hard. I couldn't actually complete it without her guide, but the whole family got in on my crush and laughed with me.
What did they think of the book as a whole, just like all the different relationships you've been through?
Not everybody has said anything, and so if people don't say anything, I don't ask.
Oh, okay.
But the people who have read it love it.
Yeah. I mean, I am really enjoying it. It's like I kind of get into that type of thing anyway. That's the kind of thing that I like to read. So
several of my male friends, both straight and gay, have read it. Mm-hmm. And to my surprise, they love it. They love it. The men love it too.
Oh yeah, it's neat. It's interesting seeing an older, like, well, not you're. I don't think you're as old as I am, but like, just to see the dating world in somebody's eyes like that at that age.
Most of the book was written when I was 45, as I was experiencing it, but I'm 60 now, and my friends are in that age range.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm 66, so around the same age. That's interesting. And then the online dating scene too, I think, is really interesting. I've never tried that. I was with a partner up until February. He passed away.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I was like, thanks. It's the second one. I can't seem. I keep killing him off. I don't know. Not on purpose. They both had cancer, but
I'm sorry.
I know. But anyway, just the thought of doing online dating, it's kind of a scary thing to think about. And what was your experience with that?
Was and is It's really hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to be very, very discerning. What I suggest to people who ask me is they make a short list of things that are just not going to work and things that people must have.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, for me, anybody who's conservative, not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who's super outdoorsy, not going to work. I can't be active all the time. I have to pace myself. Also, I've had mixed results with people who don't have a college education because I have a master's degree.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I come from a hyper-educated family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really decided unless they don't have a degree, not a good match. Now, it's not that I might not meet someone in person and find out that they're accomplished and have had an interesting life or are interesting people, and they might not have a degree. So it's not that they have to have a degree if I meet them in person, but online, it's a good filter for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of thing. I would pick a few things that are absolute no's and a few things that have to be there, and then use that. And something silly like, if no one is smiling in their photos, why would I want to meet them?
Right.
So if they don't smile, no.
Yeah.
So I just think you have to make a list. And the other thing is, I really encourage people to be safe. So I will not meet people unless it's daylight, unless I can arrive and leave in daylight.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And the other thing I really advise people about all dating is really trust your instincts, even when they don't make any sense, because they're almost always correct.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any sites that you prefer?
No.
I'm just kind of curious about that.
No, I really don't. I hate them all, but I still use them.
Which ones do you use?
Right now I'm on Bumble because it's quick and easy and free.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd heard of that. That's an app, like a phone app.
Yeah, and it's women-centric, which I like.
Oh, good. That's great. So, do you have any plans for the future? Are you going to be writing anything else in that kind of vein?
People have suggested I do it, but I think I need a rest.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working really, really hard on my writing for 7 years. 7 years ago, I had 2 manuscripts in a drawer that I wanted to try to publish professionally. And both of them needed to be edited. And so I had to work really hard to get them in shape. And although this one much less than the first one. And then my publisher published my blog twice. And so I've actually produced 4 books. I started out wanting to produce 2 books, and I've actually produced 4 books professionally in the last 7 years. And I'm incredibly grateful. My dream has come true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's been a wonderful experience. But I've had to learn an entire industry.
Right.
And I've had to learn on the job how to be a better writer. And I'm proud that I've done those things, but I'm tired. So I'm not really sure. I'm thinking about writing a movie-specific book, and I'm taking notes for it.
That sounds good. Yeah. And you've been working all along as a social worker. Are you still doing that?
I've worked full-time the entire time. It's really like having 2 jobs.
So what gave you what started you becoming, deciding that you wanted to write?
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't. So I have been writing in one form or another since I was 10. My parents moved to different states when I was 10. And the way we kept up with my father and stepmother, we being my brother and myself, is we wrote. We never called, we wrote. It was the 70s. People didn't make long distance phone calls as much.
Right.
I've also had a correspondence with a childhood friend that I met in college for 21 years. I mean, we're like having this 19th century Victorian platonic relationship that's almost entirely in writing. And I wrote someone else letters for about 15 years too. So I've always been writing something, and I got a lot of attention in my early teens for my writing, and also my teenage years. As a senior in high school, I was sent to an arts competition. I didn't win, but I was the only person sent in my English class. But I really had no desire to write professionally, but I was always writing something.
Right.
And what happened was I have a chronic illness, and I also became acutely sick in my mid-30s, and I was struggling very hard. And I would have intersections with large medical bureaucracies, and that were very upsetting and very challenging. And when I had resolved them to my satisfaction, which was 100% of the time, I might add,
Wow.
I would tell my father some sanitized version of it. My mother was deceased, but my dad was alive, and I'm close to him. I was close to him. And I would leave out the distressing part. And he kept saying, I really think you ought to write about this. And I was an AIDS service provider at the time. And I said, Dad, everybody's having these experiences. There's nothing unique to my experience. And he said, no, I really think you ought to write about this. And he did that for about a year. And so finally I decided to. And I don't know why I went to books, except that I have writers in my family and they write books. So I just sort of went to what I knew, which is writers write books.
Was your dad a writer?
My stepmother is an award-winning science fiction writer named Joanna Charnas.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And I subsequently have another writer. My second cousin is a very successful writer as well, but he came after me. Yeah, Google Charnas, you'll get my relatives long before you get me.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I know. I kind of have that background also, and I've been working as an actor for a long time. I still do as a voice actor. That's why I have this little kid voice.
Oh, I bet it's great.
Thank you. And I never had thought of writing either. I mean, I'm mostly a blog, but I have a second cousin who wrote the screenplay for Roots, So,
my goodness.
I know. So it's there somewhere in my DNA, I guess.
I actually have 5 relatives who have their own Wikipedia page.
Mm-hmm.
4 of them are writers.
That's
and
great.
2 of them are alive, and I'm named after one of the deceased ones. That's a lot of writers.
Yeah, that is. Well, it was meant to be, I guess.
I was actually named after 2 writers. I was named after Jo March in Little Women, who's a writer. Even though that Jo is a Josephine, but my family calls me Jo. And I was named after my great aunt Jean Untermeyer, who was a poet.
Wow.
Who is one of the people with her own Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
I know, it sort of seems like it was meant to be, whether I wanted it or not.
It's funny, I just interviewed I was just listening to somebody's audiobook, and his name is David Emerson Frost, but he's not related to either, Emerson or Frost. I thought it was pretty funny.
It is.
That was actually his real name.
That's pretty funny.
I know. I kind of had a wild past in the 70s. I mean, it's been a long time since that, but yeah, I mean, just sort of, just the freedom of being able to get out and do that, especially like when you're, over 50, I think it's kind of inspiring thing.
Glad to hear that. It's interesting because a lot of people have expressed surprise that I was willing to date so much in some of my adventures. And, I was really raised to be open and relaxed about my sexuality. Mm-hmm. I took an intercession course between either my first and second or third or fourth semester of graduate school, and it was on human sexuality. Mm-hmm. And there was like 12 of us in the class sitting around a big table, and they made us go around the table and talk about how sex was discussed in our home. And out of about a dozen graduate students, I was literally the only person who was comfortable, and talking about sex was not uncomfortable with either set of my parents or my mother and my father and stepmother. It was very open. I could ask anything I wanted. Everybody else had some degree of discomfort with the topic with their family. And with my father and stepmother, we talked about stuff around the dining room table. When I was a teen, when I had a teen brother, and you would have thought that would have been acutely uncomfortable for my brother to ask questions and get answered in front of his little sister. But my father and stepmother were so good about the whole thing that we would actually talk about stuff as a family around the dining table. And we had a joke, because if my brother and I asked the question, my dad would say, "Oh, kids, you don't know about that? Pause. Tell them about it, Susie." Well, grandmother, before she was a writer, was an educator.
That's amazing, because our generation, it was pretty much kept under wraps. I remember when my mother was trying to talk about menstruation, and they had the class that you would go to, and she gave me a record. It was like a record.
Oh, poor thing.
The goofiest thing, it was just like, oh my God, Mom,
But I also think, and you're fairly close to my age cohort, that I was also very influenced by the 60s, and where people were open with their bodies and not that uptight about their sexuality.
Right. Yeah, I think
so. Go ahead, please.
No, that's one thing I do relate to, because I think for me, I didn't do drugs and stuff like that, but that was my thing that I pretty much got into a lot for a while.
Yeah, as I say in the book, at least for my age, we didn't stress about sex. We stressed about relationships. But that is really not the same thing necessarily. And so we were, we had the normal angst in our youth and later on about who we were dating, was it going to develop, was he the right guy? But whether we slept with him or not was really not a big deal at all. As I say in the book, first date, second date, whatever, we just went to bed with whoever we wanted to.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, we worried about birth control, and then we worried about birth control and safe sex. But that was it.
Yeah, I can't, it's like I was able to sow all those wild oats before the AIDS thing, came in, because then by that time I was married. But yeah, I remember, it was just like, you just do it with everybody, or more than one person at a time.
Yeah, if you want to. So for example, I have friends who are my age who were perfectly comfortable picking up strangers in bars or wherever. And I really don't like to sleep with strangers. I have to know people a tiny bit. But that's up to me, how well I need to know them. And it's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've, gotten involved right away. Again, first date, second date. And other times I've waited a handful of dates. And in some cases, not at all, because they just didn't make any advances towards me, and they didn't really, they were clearly having a romance with me, but it didn't really want to touch me very much. I had no idea what that was about, but I kind of just went with it. Again, I didn't stress about that stuff. But I actually have never liked sleeping with strangers.
Yeah.
Strangers.
I know, it's kind of weird.
A lot of people don't mind it, but I've never slept with a stranger, ever.
Yeah, I may have. A couple of them.
Again, I have friends who, that's their idea of fun when they were single.
And
I
wouldn't want to now. One of the things that baby boomers are finding is that there's a high rate of STDs, because people think, oh, I'm not going to get pregnant anymore.
Yeah, there's a very high risk of STDs in a certain age group.
Yeah.
But I still try to practice safe sex until I feel like I know the guy sufficiently.
Oh yeah, I think you have to.
Not everybody does. You'd be surprised. And I've had people who will not sleep, people who are having romances with me, at least one guy, will not sleep with me with a condom. It's like, great, we'll have to do other things.
Yeah. How are you finding it now that we're, wearing masks and, having to be really super careful?
What happened to me is I broke up with someone in May 1st of last year. And then I got very, very busy with the book, with the Movie Lover's Search for Romance, and very, very busy with travel, and very, very busy at work. I had a double caseload for about 50% of the time for about 5 months, which darn near killed me.
Yeah.
And then I also had to prepare for surgery, which I had on January 2nd.
Oh, wow.
So I really put it all on the back burner. And once the book had been accepted and had been, the galleys had been read, which are the mock-ups of the book, that you have to proofread. And I was recovered from surgery, which was early February. I thought, okay, my expiration date has kind of come up at some point. I'm getting older. I need to make an effort if I want to find someone new. And in 2012, I had gone to a lot of meetups, which are,
right.
You know what they are.
Yeah.
And I had met people that way. And
That's
dated.
kind of a cool way to meet people, I think, because they have the same interests.
Yes, I thought, yeah. And so I thought, well, let me try that again, because I do much better in person than I do online. And so I went on the meetup website just to make sure I hadn't aged out, because I hadn't been there since 2012.
Mm.
And there was a message waiting for me from January. And I thought, January what? Here. But long story short, I ended up getting involved with that person. And we got involved right before the beginning of the pandemic. And I dated him until the beginning of July.
Oh, wow.
And we were just like, two little people huddled together in the pandemic, kind of going through it together.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really wasn't an issue. And so things had sort of changed by the beginning of July. People were going out more. People were not isolating as much. They were more in a bubble as opposed to complete isolation. Mm-hmm. And so I've actually had 3 dates since the beginning of July. Either I sat 6 feet away from them with the mask off, or I had the mask on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I obviously didn't get involved with people that I had 1 or 2 dates with.
Right, yeah. I know my daughter's doing that online dating thing right now. She's like 34, so kind of.
So I think in I had 3 dates with 2 men, and in both cases they rushed me.
Oh yeah.
With the mask on, and it's like, don't breathe, Let me die. So okay.
I wonder how that's gonna work.
I don't know. I talked to a friend of mine who's single and gay, and I said, well, what are you going to do? Because he's newly single.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not avoiding sex until the pandemic is over. So I think, my message, I think he's not going to jump into bed with anybody, but I think he's just going to be a little bit more discerning.
Mm-hmm.
So I had met somebody, I had a date with somebody before the pandemic and before I met the other gentleman. And we've stayed in touch and kept it clean. He wanted to flirt with me. I said, I don't think I can really flirt with you. I don't want to do anything that I can't tell the person I'm dating, because it was very clear that we were going to be monogamous from the beginning because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But he wanted to know if we broke up. And so when we did, I texted him, and I've been getting to know him through social media and through texting, not extensive texting, but a little bit of texting. So I don't know what I'm going to do if he wants to get frisky, because I don't feel like he's a stranger. I feel like I know him now somewhat.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. And we're actually going to get together today, and it didn't work out, but we may get together next week. He lives far away, so I wouldn't be seeing him very much,
Mm-hmm.
He lives too far away to make it a regular thing. But we'll just see,
Yeah.
If he wants to get frisky, I'm going to have a really long talk with him about his bubble and what he's doing to keep safe.
Right.
So I don't know. I think it really has to be a case-by-case basis, but I think the best thing to do is proceed slowly and carefully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really puts a damper on stuff. Not that I'm not really, I'm kind of at the point right now where I'm taking a long break.
I understand that. Believe me.
Yeah.
I
have dogs. It's like that's enough for me right now.
Yeah. I just think we have to be thoughtful and careful.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who aren't being thoughtful and careful aren't going to be thoughtful and careful anyway.
Yeah.
But those of us who are concerned are going to be thoughtful and careful, and maybe take things a little slower.
So when you meet with somebody, where would you initially meet with them?
I met one gentleman in the park.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very familiar with the picnic areas. And so he told me exactly where to park. And I live really near the park, so it was easy. It's like a straight shoot south.
Yeah.
And we just sat about 6 feet apart with our masks off. And then when I had the second date with him, we sat about 6 feet apart with our masks off. Outside, he lived on a boat, and so we were at his the boat harbor.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it was very nice. And the second one, I met downtown at a restaurant, and we tried to stay 6 feet apart.
I haven't even been to a restaurant other than just to pick something up. Yeah.
I didn't eat. I mean, he was kind of squeezing me in between things, and that was fine. I didn't really care.
Yeah.
I just want to get out of the house and meet somebody new. And so they had already ordered, and actually had his friend along with him. He said, "Oh, my friend's here." I said, "I'm on a double date." I just went with it. It was just fine. It's like fine.
Yeah.
I hopped in an Uber. I went downtown. I met him in a restaurant. His friend was there. It was fine. I didn't really care. I thought it was funny, actually. But I didn't even eat because, I knew it was just like a half an hour in or 45-minute, an hour in and out. But he rushed me and hugged me goodbye.
Oh.
I was like, "Don't breathe,"
Yeah. Gosh.
But I'm going to have to date more to figure it out. Because, in social work school, they would tell you that a sample study of 3 is not a big sample study.
Yeah.
We're all learning. Those of us who don't know about it are learning about it now because of the virus testing. You need a big sample study for some things.
That's true.
30,000 people for a virus.
Yeah, I know. It's like, yeah, you can't do that in 2 months.
Yeah, and definitely more than 3 dates for a dating.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm going to have to figure it out as I go along.
Wow. So do you feel like you want to get married again, or do you just sort of have whatever happens?
I like being attached, and I like having a partner.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't feel the need at all to get married again.
Right.
Now, maybe I would feel different about an individual, but in a vacuum, I definitely don't feel the need. I definitely don't feel the need in a vacuum to ever live with anybody again. What I had with the guy that I dated for 4 months was really nice. I saw him a couple of times a week.
Mm-hmm.
We stayed over at each other's houses. So I saw him at least 4 days a week. We usually had a couple of really long phone calls between. So there was almost no day that I didn't have verbal or face-to-face contact with him. And then we texted a little bit, just about whatever was going on in our day. And so I felt very connected to him, but I really only spent, 3 evenings with him.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same space where I would just as soon not live with another guy again, but just, be nice to have, contact with somebody and stuff. But really don't want to get into that whole thing of, living in somebody else, having, combining everything and that type of thing. It's nice to have your own space at this age, I think.
Well, I think particularly if you've already done it.
Mm-hmm.
And like you, I've done it twice. I lived with someone not for very long, but for a year in my mid-20s, and I lived with my husband for 6 years.
Mm.
If I'd never done it, I might want to do it. But I've lived here for almost 20 years, and I filled the space even though it's not very cluttered.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to imagine someone moving in here. So I'd really have to start fresh with somebody.
Yeah.
It is possible that I might want to do that, but I don't care about it in general. It would have to be person specific for me to want to do it.
Right. Yeah, mine was a little bit longer. I lived where I was married for 23 years.
Oh my goodness.
And then I lived with this guy for 15 years.
So you've essentially had 2 marriages for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's, I'm glad I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And things I loved about it, but I just don't feel the need to do it again unless it's specifically about that person. I want to be with you all the time.
Yeah, I think
but I'm not counting my chickens.
Right. Yeah, it's nice to have your own space. I like it. Actually, right now I'm living in a room right now, and I'm moving again, and just as a transition after he passed away, and moving again the beginning of the month. in with a friend from high school, which was pretty funny.
No, I've actually known people who have gone to their reunions and met people, and then.
Well, she's somebody I've stayed in touch with, and it's just going to be like a little hippie commune, I think.
Where you're moving to?
Yeah.
Ah, well, that's nice.
Yeah, because she built another house next to her house. So the two women that are living there are going to move over there, and then I'm going to move into the old house, and then they'll probably have like another woman in there. So everybody is around the same age group, and so that can be kind of fun.
It might be fun.
Yeah, I think it's good because, if somebody falls down or something, at least you're not by yourself, but you still have your own space.
I have a friend that I roomed with for a year and a half in graduate school, and we've remained very close.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me she thinks of me as a sister, which is very touching.
Yeah.
Acknowledgments of all my books. And she lives in the finished basement of her parents' home. She had her own house and she got tired of it, and her parents had a 1,500 square foot finished basement, and she finished it.
Nice.
So it's basically like an apartment. So I think as long as her parents are alive, she'll live there, because she sort of, and they used to be Florida in the winter and that house in the summer, but now they're getting, they're in their mid 80s, and so they're living in that house all year round.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea to keep an eye on them and stuff.
Yeah, but she's actually said she wants to live with me when we're old. and I've said to her, it's not such a bad idea. I've had apartments that, I've seen apartments where you walk in and you're essentially in a great room, a kitchen and a living room and a dining room,
Mm-hmm.
and you go off one way and there's a bedroom and bathroom, and you go off the other way and there's a bedroom and bathroom. I said, I've been to a couple of apartments that are like that.
Yeah, I've seen some of those.
I'd have to sell this place, but it's actually not such a terrible idea, and if we're both 75 or
Mm-hmm.
80, it's a pretty good idea. And it was very touching. It's like someone wants to grow old with me.
Yeah.
Very nice. So, I don't think it's going to happen, but if she brings it up again, I wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah, you never know.
I'll have equity, and we could just buy a different place.
Right. Right.
I don't think it'll happen, but it's a reasonable notion.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Grace and Frankie a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. We got the thanks, please God.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, this has been great.
Well, I'm so glad you liked the book.
I did. Yeah. I really did. It's usually, I get a lot of people that want me to read their books for my blog, and a lot of times the books just sort of pile up, and I can't get to it. But Lori was so encouraging, and then just the subject sounded like fun, so I sort of jumped on that one, and I still have other ones that I still have to get to. So now I'm just requesting them on audio after this because it's just easier.